Hello friends, in this episode of Mother Earth News and Friends, our guest and I will discuss hemp, how it's grown, the versatility of the crop, and how it may be useful to you. I'm Charlotte Brunin. We've been hearing a lot about the legalization of marijuana lately, but what about hemp? The hemp industry seems to be making strides in the U.S. and becoming a versatile crop. I'm so glad we were invited to Franny's farm to have this discussion today.
I'm Josh. I'm the head of video production at Mother Earth News.
Okay. Charlotte Brunin. I'm the podcast producer at Mother Earth News.
I'm Franny from Franny's farm.
I'm Vanessa, sustainability consultant with VGK Consulting.
So before we started recording, you two got into talking about the difference between hemp and cannabis. And I was wondering if you could revisit that and talk about it and talk about the different plant types a little bit again.
Sure. So it's very important and interesting to know that cannabis is a plant. There's lots of different varieties. It has lots of different components in it, just like any other varieties of lots of different tomatoes, lots of different potatoes. So there's all these cannabinoids that are super beneficial that are in the cannabis plant. THC is the only one that has psychoactive effects that will get you, quote, high. And that is in marijuana. So that's what distinguishes, the THC level is what distinguishes industrial hemp from marijuana. Mm-hmm. And if it's less than 0.3% THC, then it is an industrial hemp in that category.
Okay. So are they all as useful as one another, do you feel like, as far as the industrial hemp strains go, or what have you experimented with and experienced?
Yeah, just like with the tomato example, we like to use different tomatoes for salsa, for tomato sandwiches, for soups. It's the same with industrial hemp. There is a lot of different varieties. We grew for fiber, so we used a variety that's going to grow very tall, going to bud out and have less floral parts to it, and a taller stalk. You can also go for food and in grain production. You're looking for different varieties that do that as well. And same for the medical. So there's lots of different varieties. And that's a lot of what our experimentation has been going on with right now, testing the different varieties and comparing them.
Okay. And so, Franny, why did you get into farming with industrial hemp?
It is something that I've been talking about for a long time. Even with my dad, we knew it was illegal for reasons that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And was really just waiting for the right opportunity. Mm-hmm. We do small scale homesteading, and I'm very big into science and experimentation. So it's always exciting, the opportunity to work with something new. So that as soon as it became legal, we decided to do it.
What, speaking of the legality, how has that evolved in North Carolina and in other states?
So right now there's 31 states that have implemented an industrial hemp pilot program. And most of it is involved in research. So it is, in North Carolina last year was the first year that we were able to grow. And that all happened very, very fast. It seemed like, but it had really been 3 years in the works. And one of our business partners that operates HempX has been really instrumental in all the things. And North Carolina is the only state that was farmer funded for our pilot program. Every other state has been state funded and put money into it. And in North Carolina, it was the farmers that band together to raise the money to fund the commission so that we would be able to grow.
Wow.
Do you know how hemp grows in Western North Carolina compared to other regions?
Well, that is part of what all our experiment is. Last year was the first year that we were able to do that, to grow industrial hemp. And it's based on research from all these other different places. So we really relied heavily on Kentucky that's been doing it for several years. We're part of the NC State Research Project and worked cooperatively with some of the other educational institutions to do our comparative plots, growing some of the same varieties to see how it is. So the outlook is very optimistic. We know it grows here, even though we planted it, all of us, a month too late last year. We still saw success with the crop.
So your yields were comparable to studies that they were doing in Kentucky?
We did not, we were doing experimental trials on the varieties and not so much on the yields yet. So we're looking for a lot of different things. You know, we looked for water, pest, all sorts of different things. But the ideal growing time would be, we're planning around May 15th this year. Last year, it was late June before most of us got our crop in the ground. And that was just because we were allowed to get our permits. It was already past when the seed should have been in the ground. So everybody was scrambling to get it as quick as they could and get it in. And there's a whole bunch about the cycle of the plant and when it will produce and the solstice and when everything goes into flower. So we know, even with our yields, that we could have gotten a lot better results with an earlier planting. So we're all on schedule to plant earlier this year and do our science there.
So that'll be exciting to see and compare how one year did to the other as far as planting went.
Exactly.
But your crops were beautiful still last year.
They were very productive, very beautiful. We got all sorts of wonderful products that we got to experiment with from using what we grew in our 1 acre plot.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why you're moving it up front this year. Show it off.
Yeah, and we're also growing a different variety this year as well. So we are going to be planting clones this year. Last year we planted from seed for a fiber variety. This year we're experimenting and planting clones, 2 different types in 2 different situations.
What is a clone? Sorry to
So-
cut you off.
You know, that is a good question. It's essentially a plant start. If you go in any box store and you're buying a little plant in a pot, that is exactly what it is. It's just a plant that's been started in a greenhouse.
Okay, thank you.
That is a very good question, though, and thanks for clearing that up. So this year we will be doing that, and we're using a whole different method and planting a different variety, and we will be also testing for floral parts and CBD production on one of our plots. Very exciting.
What kind of products are you looking at, Fran?
The world is so open to so many different. And so as part of the research project, a lot of our end product is also in research. So we've partnered with several different entrepreneurs, local businesses that are using our products right now to infuse honey, to make tea, also to use it in an everything ingredient. So a lot of the food part is a real passion of mine and interest. So we use some of that for food experiments, but we also did fiber studies last year. First time that some of these fiber artists have ever had the opportunity to look at different varieties of hemp and different ways it was retted to find out what is the best material for different textiles. And then this year we'll also be harvesting floral parts that will be used in a lot of different methods from being sold specifically as a floral part to being used into other byproducts as well.
Cool.
Yes, so many possibilities.
So, what do you expect to find with your experiments? Do you have a hypothesis that you're kind of working to prove? And I guess I mean the nutrition for your animals, and then maybe the marketability or the profitability on your end with the industrial hemp?
So we have a lot of hypothesis because that's what I do as I like to geek out in science. So when you look at it on the science perspective, got a lot of hypothesis, and we're doing testing with different organic fertilizers on different areas. So that's one area of hypothesis, which is my favorite and fun. But then we have a team of people that are working on what is the business hypothesis and financial projections of the industry and what is most profitable, where's the demand, where do we already have the processors and places that we can take it to an end product. And that is just so fascinating. There is a market. And then on the sustainability model that goes back to the science that I love to do, we have some great hypotheses and things that I'm trying with planting flowers in our paths, between our rows, cover cropping, using the animal rotation on it. There's some really, especially in the small ruminants, there's a lot of, NC State is also doing studies on hemp production for animal feed, animal bedding. So tinkering with those. But yes, there's a lot of hypothesis out there, and we have to wait and follow hashtag hemp notes at Franny's farm, because that's where I reveal interesting little tidbits. And that's where also you can go and find out where I was. That's how I started recording my field notes last year.
Okay.
Yep. Go out there with measuring tapes and measure differences of rain on growth and light on growth. Those are the two of the main things that we're looking at in the field production.
How many acres have you dedicated to this project?
So last year we did a 2-acre project, and they were done in different. One of them we did that was great. We did all traditional farming methods. We plowed, harrowed, tilled, rock farmed, seeded. The other one we tried a no-till drill method in a field that had never been worked before, and that was not very successful for a lot of different reasons. This year we're doing 2 quarter-acre plots that are going to be also, it's the same to use them as comparisons. So it's all in the name of science. But yes, it's very interesting. So we do small plots so you can really take data and compare. And we're doing that in unison with the Mountain Research Station. That's also growing our same varieties, the same methods, but in a different location, a little bit further west with a higher altitude, a little bit different latitude.
That's interesting.
Did you find that you needed to irrigate or water the hemp more than you would any other crops? Or what's your experience with that?
So last year, I said, we were already late in our planting, and I said, let's just go hardcore, sustainable, no anything. We do not irrigate. We just watch to see what would happen. And it needed to be irrigated. The plot that was not successful, that we did a no-till drill, we planted a week later, and 3 weeks, we did not get a drop of rain after that. So we needed irrigation. This year, we're using ram pumps in our spring-fed stream to run up to main lines for drip irrigation.
Okay.
As far as farming hemp, did you have to invest in a lot of additional equipment when you're harvesting? Is it harvested, how do you harvest? I guess my question is, how do you harvest hemp?
So again, keeping in mind, we're a small scale farm. We did everything by just a tractor, using basic implements. The example I want to set is these farms that already have equipment in place. How do we use that equipment to grow hemp, a different crop? And that's exactly what we did. So there is large scale production on the east part of the state, and it's done completely different. So they're using all very cool major industrial harvesting equipment and so forth. On our farm, as an example of what people could really do on 1 to 3 acres with more labor, because there's a lot of us that will do that, create jobs, we'll have laborers. We even harvested it by hand. We did. And we redded it in the field, which means we set up teepees as an example. That's what they were doing in the early 1900s in our research. We saw all these cool black and white photos of hemp teepees. So we did that. We also used a water redding, and we just cut a big tank we had and filled it up we put a pump in the stream, filled it up, did water redding. So we're really setting an example for what small scale growers can do. We have a tractor, we have implements, but it's standard equipment that would be used for any farming. So that's what makes it viable. So,
wow. I have another question.
Yeah.
As far as hemp goes, do you know if it fits into rotation of other common crops in our area?
You can absolutely rotate hemp. What we personally did was we planted, this year we're going to do a second crop, and then we'll cover crop. So, and that is because I'm all about the small scale farmer and how does this fit into a sustainability model on small farms. We have livestock. So We are also experimenting with how our livestock is doing on the hemp after it's already been harvested with some of the byproducts and the floral parts and seed. Very, very, very interesting. Really fits so cool into a sustainability model of being able to rotate your animals.
As a pilot program, I guess Western North Carolina to me seems like the ideal place. We have the climate for growing hemp, we have the land, we have the farmers, we have mountain research stations for crops, we have a local fiber mill. There's all these things that have, I think, helped make projects like this successful in our region. But if you were looking at it from another state, what would you say is key for success, or for somebody that might just be interested in doing it elsewhere?
Well, I'm really focused on North Carolina, and every state, there's great places, and always, no matter where you are, you want to start with your extension services. They're the ones that will connect you with all the local, wherever you are, who is doing the research in that area, and those are great places to start. So always start with the extension services in your area, no matter what state you're in. In North Carolina, we are doing amazing things with collaboration. And like I said, North Carolina is the only state that has exclusively been funded by farmers. So we've got Western Piedmont Community College for small scale people that want to start a boutique business and learn how to work with this product. They have an oil press, they have a flour mill, they have all these, they're growing there. It's a great place to actually get hands-on learning experience. Start small, learn how to work with the fiber, learn how to make paper, learn all these interesting things. Even if you're not growing, you can have access to start getting involved in the industry. And we are looking at our state right now as finally got interest in North Carolina about doing some funding.
Good.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, especially since it was lifted up by farmers who wanted to experiment themselves in the first place. It's nice to have some state backing now. But it's really cool that you had that demand. So, it makes me happy to hear that.
And that's what we need to do. Everybody that hears, sees, or thinks anything about hemp, we need to create the demand, buy it, experiment with it. Nobody's really had the opportunity to try the food products, but they're everywhere now. So start buying it.
Can everything be used on the hemp plant, or is there something that is wasted?
That is the best question. I love this question, and that's what's so great about this plant is everything can be used. So in our example, and one of the reasons we actually hand harvested with machetes out in the field, we used every single part of that hemp plant. So we winnowed seed with fans and sheets, used the seed, pressed oil from the seed for food, used the remaining seed cake, re-implemented oils in that with coconut oils, and experimented in rolling those in cocoa and making all sorts of interesting food products. The chaff was used to make tea. The stalk was used. We did all the hand in our Hemp X. We processed it all by hand.
You had hemp break.
And what happens when you break the hemp that way, it comes into these different parts. So you have the long stringy fibers that are used in textiles. And then the stuff that's left over, which is kind of the top, the bottom, that inner part, that bast can be used for your building materials. We used it as animal bedding. And then we sent off all the fiber varieties to weavers to experiment with. So we used every single part of that. And the small plants that were probably waist below up to about 2 to 3 feet that we left in the field is what we used our experiments in rotating our sheep. And we did fecal samples before and after to determine if the theory of industrial hemp can really be beneficial because of its tannins and its oils to reduce fecal counts of parasite loads in small ruminants, which is the number one thing that has killed sheep flocks all across the world and goats and so forth, is their intolerance to parasite, their resistance to parasites, and their resistance now to all the different pharmaceuticals we've used for worming and so forth. So in 2 weeks we saw, and this is just very basic, taking samples, looking at them under a microscope before and after, about a 30% reduction in parasite load in just 2 weeks.
Wow.
And this is
Amazing.
anecdotal. I'm not, a research scientist. That is my geek out on science fun stuff, playing with poop.
Yeah. What else were they eating besides the hemp during that time?
They were just grazing.
Okay.
Just grazing the pasture. And by that time, and one of the things we saw, and one of the reasons we're doing plasticulture this year is because the invasion of weeds, especially the first year you till a field, there was a lot of other forage for them out there along with the hemp. So there was a really good balance, but no different than what they would have seen in these pastures, really, except for the hemp was the one thing that was a different foraging for them.
Okay. That's really cool.
When you were talking about the different parts of the product, you mentioned HempX. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so HempX is an educational, fun festival that was started by Blake Butler 4 years ago to raise awareness. And this is also, while he is behind the scenes, working in all these political organizations and making presentations to commissioners, all that, working to get industrial hemp legalized. So it started at a brewery, lots of vendors, fun, awareness, and it has since moved to Franny's farm. This will be the second year. And we've moved the focus a lot towards educational workshops where we've had people that are making paper, but also not just demonstrating. It's a hands-on, so you can get your own hands in there and actually work and make hemp paper. We also have an amazing weaver that comes and teaches people how to weave this fiber and blend it, and which was very interesting. And then we had an example of using the hemp breaks and the combs, demonstrating how they did it in the early 1900s, all processing by hand, breaking it into these different parts to see what it looks like as it goes through the process. And this year we've got some other exciting things in store, along with some music and hemp beers and hemp infused foods and a taste of hemp. It's a big, fun, educational, and fun. It's just fun.
When is HempX? Is that in September?
It's September 22nd and
Okay.
23rd. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, you said there were some interesting food products that you made with your crop last year. What were some of those?
There's a lot of food being used right now. One of my favorite is a hempay, and we did not discover or make that product, but we have been in unison supporting and working through different recipes to really get it more popular, and it's a great product. But we made a lot of little protein cocoa balls and interesting things from all the stuff that was left over from the oil press. Then also we attempted to make some of it into flour. It was a little granular.
Yeah.
We figured it would work better as a crust on something. And then the teas and the honey, and using some of the floral parts to actually infuse things for flavor. So it's great in sauces.
Interesting.
How would you describe the flavor?
And it's interesting. It depends on the product it was
Okay.
used in. So a straight hemp, like the hempay, I really love it. It's very, it's earthy and grainy, but it's a very good medium to take on other flavors as well. Hemp oil is one of my favorite things to cook in now because it takes high heat.
Okay.
And it's got a really smooth, earthy flavor. I think, to me, olive oil starts tasting tanniny. It's a lot of times it's a light green. I use it in eggs. I use it on everything now. And so the hemp oil is one of my favorites. Use it on pasta and any and everything. But I've seen and used, we use hemp hearts on everything. It's a lot of times it's just like a garnish, using hemp hearts on all the things. It adds a nice texture. I love it in yogurt, and I put it on top of cupcakes.
Nice. You guys
Yeah.
make any hemp milk?
I have not made hemp milk, but I have a friend who's experimented a lot with this and is doing some really cool infused honeys that makes hemp milk. And I've had the stuff that she's made, and it's great. But I've never been a milk lover of any kind, and my dad was a cattle farmer. I don't touch cow's milk. I've never really been a huge milk lover, and I was like, that I would drink.
Nice.
What are some other products that are kind of everywhere that people can buy so they can stimulate the market and help hemp farmers like yourself?
Well, the food industry is very easy to do that, and it's everywhere, even in your local stores right now. Hemp hearts are a great thing, hemp oil, and there's all sorts of hemp milk now, food products. We are entering into a whole new world now where people have access for, medical uses. There are the cannabinoids, and I'm not talking about medical marijuana at all. I'm just talking about not THC, but the industrial hemp plant, CBDs, all these cannabinoids that have other medicinal effects for anti-anxiety, sleep. We have places popping up everywhere that are hemp pharmacies where you can go in and meet with physicians, people that are educated, and learn about alternative medicine that may help you, each individual, which is a great way for people to educate themselves. And then on the fiber, we've got a ways to go on that. It's really hard to get USA made hemp products in any of these things right now. So if you find it USA made, absolutely go for it. A lot of our products come from Canada. They're doing some really good research there, and stay away from hemp made in China.
Speaking of those building products with hemp, can you speak to the differences between concrete and hempcrete?
Yeah, so hempcrete is you're using the hemp plant, which is a sustainable, does not require all this huge carbon footprint, and that when you're using concrete, we've got rock mining that creates that with a lot of environmental impacts. They're both a material that you're using with lime to bind together to make a building material. But the beautiful thing, hempcrete, made out of a sustainable product, it is mold resistant, heat resistant, so it makes for a better insulation that's less fire retardant. It's lighter. It doesn't have off-gassing. There's all these beautiful and amazing things with hempcrete. And in our building industry, it's really entered into more than just like a hempcrete building material. It's really being used in insulation and a lot of other products as well. It's an amazing building material. And we're going to be doing another really cool experiment with that soon.
Great.
Before we started recording, we were talking about the transportation of hemp. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to clear that up a little bit, even though it's still a gray area. Can people transport hemp products over state lines?
So the only people that would be really transporting hemp products are the growers.
Okay.
They grow that, or the processors. So we all have hemp permits, and as long as you have your permit, there's not any issues. And really a lot of that had come from fear with federal regulations that are different from each individual state. And a lot of that is also dealing with the clones or those seed starts. So once it's processed, there's not any issues really with transportation and moving it to manufacturing or processors or where it will be taken to the next quality product.
Okay.
Does that help clear it up? So it's
Yeah,
not
I
a
think so.
not a huge fear. Needs to be related to that. Just have your hemp permit and processors.
Are there any other myths that you can think of that you'd like to bust?
Oh, yeah. The biggest one is industrial hemp will get you high, and that is not true. So it does not. That is the different variety. Let's see some of the other ones. Yes, it does taste good. Yes, it is a sustainable product. There's a lot of people that say, no, it's not sustainable because you're still planting, harvesting, nothing. It is absolutely right now one of the crops that is being grown with no pesticides, no herbicides. We can't even do that if you want to use it for medical or food purposes right now. So it is a great crop. And number 3, because so many people a lot of the press, they confuse it with marijuana. And greenhouse production is where a lot of that is done. Industrial hemp is a great field crop with natural light. It was grown like that forever. It still is most successful being grown like that. So it is super viable for farmers. Oh, I could keep busting myths.
Yeah.
There's so
go for
much
it.
confusion about it. So it's very, very important for people to educate themselves. That's the only real impact you have. Once you know, you cannot unknow. So if you question something and you question the answers, research more and continue to question. It's okay. Research, find out the truths, and experiment. You can't speculate on what it tastes like until you taste it. So go buy it and try it and, just research it.
You just listened to a conversation between the friends of Mother Earth News. If you're interested in learning more about what you've heard in this episode, visit motherearthnews.com/podcast for more information and resources. You may also find links from this episode in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and stay up to date through your favorite podcast provider or our website, motherearthnews.com/podcast. Please rate and leave us a review and let us know what you think of the show. Give us a share so that we may continue sharing our friendly conversations with you. If you would like to get in touch, please send your mail to motherearthnewspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining us. I'm podcast producer Charlotte Brunin. Our podcast production team includes Haley Casey, Jessica Mitchell, and Robert Riley. Zach Slayton provided our music. The Mother Earth News and Friends podcast is a production of Ogden Publications.